Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Master Chef's Web Show. An accident waiting to happen, and we are at the moment we are missing our special guest Ray Keene. Oh no, we now have him. I wanted to ask Ray actually. When was your association with Korchnoi started? Because I understand it was quite a bit before the Baguio City match.
Yes, I'll tell you the story. What happened was that in 1974, Korchnoi played Karpov in the final of the candidates tournament, which was held in Moscow. And this was to earn the right to challenge Bobby Fischer for the title. Now, nobody seriously thought that Fischer would defend, but they had to go through the motions. So essentially, the match between Korchnoi and Karpov in 1974, late 1974 actually, was going to be actually the World Championship, the de facto World Championship. And I went out to Moscow with Bill Hartston and his then wife, Jana, the Czech lady originally known as Mali Petrova. So the three of us went out there with the intention of writing a book about the match. And it looked as if it was going to be a bit of a walkover because after, I think, 17 games, Korchnoi had lost 3, won none, and it was the best of 24. So he was in a pretty desperate situation. And Korchnoi invited us to go to his dacha in the woods outside Moscow. Now, dachas, for your audience, were country houses that were given to prominent Soviet citizens as a reward. I mean, they were short of many commodities in the USSR because they weren't attached to the global economic system. But occasionally people got given a car, like Botvinnik was given a car for winning Nottingham 1936, and Korchnoi had a dacha in the woods outside Moscow, which was a nice country house. And this made up for the fact that the flats they had in the main capital cities were usually the size of a broom cupboard. And even someone like Yuri Averbach, who very sadly died a few days ago at the age of 100 and had been president of the Soviet Chess Federation, when I visited his flat in Moscow, his bedroom was actually the living room. They just converted the sofa into a bed at night. And very, very cramped living conditions, even for very prominent people who should have been extremely well off. So we went to visit this dacha outside Moscow, and I said to Korchnoi that I've been looking at the earlier games of the match, in particular game 5, which had been a Queen's Indian defence, where he gained space in the centre with the move d4 to d5, and then played the whole thing very strategically and tried to maintain his big pawn centre and played the sort of reinforcing move, queen, which had been on c2 to d1. And I said, this struck me as very odd because the queen on c2 struck me as being in a very, very powerful position. And surely the thing to do would be to play h4 and try and make Karpov's arse up a tree. And he seemed quite impressed with this. And lo and behold, in his next white game but one, he tried this idea and blew Karpov off the board in about 20 moves. And I think he was quite impressed with the fact that I looked at his openings and immediately found a way to convert them into devastating weapons, whereas he'd seen them as sort of long-term strategic stuff. And it's one of my beliefs, and this has actually been written up by Garry Kasparov in one of his books on openings, that if you play the opening right, and this can be with either white or black, they come a point where you can actually destroy your opponent's position, actually destroy it, if you make the right move. But people are somehow conditioned to thinking in a sort of strategic way, or as black in a sort of defensive way. and it doesn't occur to them that even with black you can completely annihilate your opponent's position if you hit on the right plan at the right moment. And I think Korchnoi was impressed with this. And when he qualified for the semi-final of the candidates tournament in 1977, was due to play Lev Pologaevsky. I played him in a tournament in, I think it was Lucerne. And I tried a very strange variation of the English opening against him. I lost the game, but I think, again, he was very impressed with the fact that I came extremely close to destroying his position in the opening. And there was a later game between David Goodman as white and John Nunn as black, where David Goodman tried my idea and got it right and actually did destroy John Nunn in the opening, completely wiped him out. And I could see Korchnoi was quite impressed. So I said, well, why don't you let me become your second for the match against Pologaevsky? And he agreed. And in the game you're going to see against Pologaevsky, I recommended a line I've been analysing where black actually tries to take white out in the first 7 moves. I think you'll see what I mean when you look at the game. Oh, here we are. Yeah, this was what I called the English defence, and I called it the English defence because it was played a lot in the 19th century by a man called Owen, who was actually a Reverend J. Owen, and it was taken up both by myself and Tony Miles, more or less independently and simultaneously. And the idea is, as with playing 1 G6 and 2 Bishop G7, that you invite white to build up a big pawn centre, and then you just try and crush it, just wipe it out. And I had an excellent score with this line, and I persuaded Victor to try it. And I said, against Pologaevsky in particular, who's a very great player, but he's one whose strength is predicated very much on playing opening lines that he knows extremely well. And if you hit him with something that he's never seen before and will probably totally underestimate, you may well take him out before he realizes what's going on.
Ray, do you think there was like an element of paranoia in Korchnoi's decision to want to have an English second? That he felt that the Soviet system was geared against him. So maybe he would have a Russian second who would actually inform the authorities of some secret preparation or something.
Well, he'd already defected by 1977, so having a Russian second was more or less completely out of it.
Right.
For his match in the quarterfinal in 1977, he employed the Dutch Grandmaster Hans Ree, very good friend of mine, actually, a very good chess writer. But I don't think that Ree's insights into what was possible remotely matched the kind of dynamism that was at work in the English chess school at the time. And Victor certainly said to me that the difference between having Dutch seconds and English seconds was the difference between light and darkness, which I thought was quite nice.
Who was the darkness?
Well, the Dutch Hans Ree.
Okay.
I mean, I like Hans Ree and he's a wonderful man, but I think we completely outclassed the Dutch input and transformed Korchnoi into a different kind of person.
I thought it might be like the dark side of the force, and that was the English chess.
Oh, I see. No, that wasn't what I meant. I should add that by this time in the game, Pologaevsky was already in time trouble.
No.
Wow.
He spent a huge amount of time thinking in the opening, and he was utterly surprised by what happened. And even if he'd found all the right moves, he would probably have lost some time. So remind me, what happened now?
Well, white attacked black's queen.
Yep.
Black took on d2.
Yep.
And now white played king f1.
That was stupid.
Well, it shows that he's been thrown by what is happening.
Well, exactly. Yeah. Now, what he should play in this position
Let's take the knight. Take the
His
bishop.
bishop takes d2, and he was worried about queen g4. But yeah, exactly. You know, white's got to go verbonk here, and this position is
Crazy.
it's crazy. Yeah, I mean,
Well,
These are your notes, by the way, Ray.
yeah, and that's what Polagowski should have done.
Yeah.
well, you could see black getting smashed in this position as well as white, couldn't you?
You certainly could. I mean,
Anything
I'm not
back
sure. I don't. What do the computers say about this position?
Unclear.
We don't use them.
You don't use them. Well,
Well, not on the show. You know, we you know, we like the. It's just kind of boring when people say, "On the engine says this, the engine says
yeah,
that."
well, we never used them for the match either. They weren't strong
Yeah.
enough. So that's what Polagowski. He had to do that. He had to. I mean, his position in the match was already fucking critical. So, you know, he might as well have done it. I mean, there was nothing to lose. Playing King F1 was just bloody stupid.
Yeah.
And
Well,
after
we'll
that,
just show them. We'll just show them what a bad position he gets, and then we're probably not going to get time to do the full game and then another 3 games. So we'll well, so it's knight f6, hitting e4 one more time, and now black takes on f3. Pawn
Yep.
takes, plays knight c6
That's a nice move.
with a position that's more like a reverse king's gambit than
yeah,
you know, than anything else really, because black's.
I mean, imagine you're in serious time trouble already. You know, your position is a smoking ruin. You know, and the idea that Korchnoi could do this to a strong Soviet grandmaster so quickly, I was, you know, it was revelatory at the time, horrifying.
Yeah.
I look at it. I mean, the white's position. I mean, what a total smoking ruin this is.
Were the Russians unaware that you were working with Korchnoi at this time? Because if I was in Polagowski's camp, I would have wanted to know, first of all, who his seconds were and what the seconds played. Right, and you know, it's only common sense, right?
I think they knew perfectly well. I mean, I was, you know, more than happy to let people know that I was working with Korchnoi.
Yeah.
The microphone is somehow blurred.
Yeah, your microphone might have slipped, Ray.
How's that? Can you hear me now?
Oh, that's much better, yeah.
Yeah, I said I didn't make any secret of the fact that I was working with Korchnoi, nor did Korchnoi.
Yeah.
And they knew perfectly well. I think they just didn't take the precaution, or maybe they underestimated us. I don't know what it was, but Polagowski got completely stomped in this match. I mean, he lost, what was it, 5 games or 4 games and won 1, and the others were drawn.
How did Michael Steen get involved?
I suggested him. Michael had been at Trinity College, Cambridge. Not quite with me, because I think he came up just after I'd gone down. But you know, I was very impressed by him, and I said that we needed somebody who was up to speed with mainstream openings as well as the offbeat stuff. So Steen was entirely my recommendation.
Right. Okay. Now this game, I sensed a sort of your influence in the choice of 1G3 because of your interest, first of all, in flank openings, and I don't know if you were, you know, you knew Lawrence Day well at that time, but
yes, I've known Lawrence Day since 1967, when I met him in the Junior World Championship in Jerusalem. Now, I'll tell you a funny story about Lawrence. We got time for these anecdotes?
Yeah. We just skip on the games, you know.
Yeah. And I met Lawrence at the Junior World Chess Championship in Jerusalem in 1967. And he was a very clean living young Canadian. And, you know, I'd say things after the game like, right, let's go for a brandy or a drink or a couple of pints of Israeli or whatever. He said, oh no, he said, my grandmother's promised me $100 if I don't drink anything until I'm 21. And I said, this is absolutely crazy. I said, no, $100, and they were Canadian dollars. They weren't real dollars, they were Canadian dollars. Sorry to Canadians, apologise. I know they're real dollars in Canada.
Sort of.
They were Canadian dollars, so they weren't worth quite as much as American dollars. I said, $100 isn't worth it, you know. You should go and get pissed occasionally. He said, no. So Lawrence waited until he was 21 before he started drinking. And of course, the upshot was that once he was 21 and could drink and had got his $100, that he went bonkers taking stuff. And, you know, he became a sort of like major advocate for smoking, drinking, and taking drugs. And when I met him a few years later at the Staunton Memorial, and you might have seen him, he looked a little bit like a 1,000-year-old Father Christmas. I mean, he'd just sort of taken to drink, drugs, the whole lot. And
Sounds like the perfect antidote for the Battle of Baguio City, if you ask me.
well, this is the point is that if you want to persuade people to do things, that sort of coercion and bribery just doesn't work. You know, it makes people more anxious to do it. You know, like it's forbidden fruit. And if God had said, "Oh, you know, those stupid old apples, eat them whenever you like," probably Adam and Eve wouldn't have touched them with a barge pole. But because it was forbidden fruit, they but right, apples got to eat them quickly.
Let's get into the match itself, because the build up to the match. What happened there? Why did it turn into such a controversial affair?
Well, as you know, Korchnoi defected from the USSR in 1976, and the Russians reacted by boycotting Korchnoi from the strongest tournaments. So it was, you know, very hostile ground. And
well, of course, the match against Spassky set the tone for that, didn't it? The final of the candidates.
That didn't help, but Spassky was only half Soviet at the time. I mean, he wasn't living in Russia. He was living in France. He married a French girl, and he didn't really have the absolutely full backing of the Soviet Chess Federation in the way that Karpov did in Baguio. And you know, there was real absolute hatred between the two of them. They loathed each other, and both sides loathed each other. And I saw an opportunity here. That the match was being played in the Philippines, not in Moscow. So the match was exposed to all the vagaries of modern, I say Western media. The Philippines is in the east of, but very Americanized, and their media was, you know, much like the media here. And I thought that the Soviets are going to have to run the gamut of a media which is more interested in sensation than whether 15H4 in the subvariation of the Verisov line is really good or not. And I thought that when Petra Lervik, who was Korchnoi's, you know, girlfriend, I suppose is the way to put it.
Your microphone's going again.
Yeah, just check your microphone, please, Ray.
Oh, sorry. How's that? Any better?
Perfect. That's perfect.
Yeah. Petra Lervik complained about Karpov having yogurt during one of the games. I thought, well, this is an opportunity to do something that will turn it into a little bit of a circus. And a circus is what the Soviets probably just don't want. They want something that's purely technical. And by leveraging it into a circus, I thought this would give us the advantage. And this game with G3 is one where, you know, the circus had started off. It got worse. I mean, it actually got out of hand later on, with these Ananda Marga terrorists and so on joining us.
We must hear about that later.
But anyway,
is this the yogurt game? Where the yogurt was put down by the side of the board, and then
the yogurt game was game 5.
Oh.
So the protest about the yogurt took place after that, and this game.
Yeah, this becomes a Lawrence Day big clamp formation, which I had a lot of experience with myself. And now white plays c3, and if you put the knight on c3, it's a normal closed Sicilian, but the knight on c3 tends to be quite misplaced, and then white ends up moving it to e2 or something later, and it's still not very well placed. So so white goes c3 in order to be able to at some point threaten to play d4 and gain a spatial advantage in the centre.
Yeah.
Was this your idea, Ray, to play g3?
To be absolutely honest, no. And we didn't even know he was going to do it. He did it at the board. He just sat down, thought a bit, and then played G3.
Okay.
And everyone was very surprised.
So you didn't use reverse psychology on him, like, do not play G3, Victor. I will leave if you play G3.
No, it was nothing to do with us. It was entirely his own decision. And he never did it again during the match.
So White is limbering up to play D4. And what struck me about this was Karpov's moves are quite sensible, but they were a little bit too methodical, and it allows White to get this move in D4.
I don't think he should have played knight E8 to C7. It's very slow.
Yeah.
The knight's perfectly good on... I mean, if I'd been black a few moves ago, I would have played not rook B8, but is that the position?
Yeah.
Well, just before he plays rook B8, I think I'd have played. B6 here.
Well, isn't rook B8 okay when you combine it with this?
Yeah, rook B8's all right, but
and then just get.
I think this knight E8 to C7 stuff is very.
Like that.
Knight D7 and B5 is probably not terrible.
No,
that was something like that was played in one of the Spassky Petrosyan games from their 1966 match. I think it was game 15, and I did it once against Bill Hartston in a game in a tournament in Marlow. You give up the light square bishop and just accentuate the black square control.
Yeah,
quite a drawish position actually.
We're going to have to race through a number of moves here because.
All right, okay, race away.
We've got White now establishing a pawn wedge in the centre as a permanent space advantage, and Black's king is castled into this side where the wedge is pointed. So, I mean, I think this is a very unpleasant position for Black.
It's absolutely horrible. It's absolutely horrible.
Yeah. So now H3.
Oh, by the way, Queen F1 is an excellent move. It's a move of genius, because first of all, it breaks part of the pin against F3, and secondly, it makes H3 possible, which I think Karpov thought he prevented it, but Queen F1 makes it possible. Now Black's position really stinks.
Yeah, because when White gets in G4, which is inevitably coming here, right? Well, that move. So if you play knight A4 there, then Black plays knight takes D4, and the knight on A4 would hang. So bishop G4 is a very clever move. It gets Black to go E6, and then knight A4. Then if Black goes knight takes A5, E5, White plays knight C5.
Yep.
And the bishop is no longer en prise with check.
That's right.
Yeah. So knight A4, knight A5. Now this position is, absolutely disgusting. Because not only has White got the huge space advantage on the king side, where he can prepare G4 and F5, but he's also better on the queen side by virtue of this knight on this powerful outpost on the open C file. So you get the impression always that the Soviet players were more happy with well-studied scenarios rather than anything offbeat.
Yeah.
From the stuff I've read about this match, the general opinion is that the actual standard of play, because of all the shenanigans and the difficulties, was not that high. But there were a number of extraordinary games, weren't there?
Oh, I think the standard was quite high. I mean, there were one or two moments when Korchnoi simply made horrible blunders, and that reduced the standard a bit. But usually he was in desperate time trouble, and he was just trying to make a move. But I thought on the whole the standard was quite good. And here, if you remember your chess history, does this position remind you of anything? Alekin Nimzovich, San Remo, 1930.
Don't remember that one.
It's the famous
right, with the bishop D2
winner and White
and the pin on the C file.
Up his major pieces on the C file, pinning Black's knight. I mean, it's the same motif.
But this one's rather more straightforward because Black, his a7 pawn is hanging, and when he goes rook, his knight is pinned, and when he defends the knight with rook b7, bingo, there goes the exchange.
Exactly.
And
after which he could have resigned.
Yeah, that is the end of the game, and he continued for a number of moves. But I think we're going to let the readers,
listeners,
listeners, even viewers. There's a correct term. Viewers. We'll let them look this up for themselves if they're interested in the gory details of how.
Yeah, the rest of it's an anticlimax, of course.
Yeah.
It's quite uncommon for Karpov to be completely outplayed like that. To be left with all his pieces on very bad squares, uncoordinated position. I mean, the Karpov was renowned for his ability to coordinate his army in perfect unison, and here he's just been completely smashed.
Yeah, well, much like the game 21 from the 1974 match, which was the one I mentioned in the preamble, where I suggested this idea in the Queen's Indian, where you play h4 and attack the Black King, rather than sort of regrouping on the back rank like Korchnoi done in game 5 of that match. So, if you catch Karpov, I played Karpov a few times and usually I lost. But the one game where I drew and actually had a rather good position for a long time, I was black against him in 1977 and tournament in Bad Lauterberg in Germany.
Wasn't that a classical model?
Sorry?
It was a classical perk, wasn't it?
No, I lost that one. That was in Moscow. This was one where I was black in. I played Philidor's defence, and I took on d4 and played g6, and he had no idea what to do. I'm convinced I was better somewhere. He didn't even remotely try to refute what I'd done. He just played standard moves, and I got a really excellent position.
Well, it's also slightly reminiscent of Tony Miles's win with 1-8.
Yes.
So again, Karpov, he might have been a bit insulted by that as well. Possibly.
Yeah, possible.
Just going through the final rights here.
Yep.
Oh dear, that's
right.
it.
And that was the end of that. So, okay. The next game was one of the ones you suggested we put in, Ray.
Yeah.
So Korchnoi Disaster in Time Trouble. I don't know if we should look at this from White's point of view or Black's. Maybe it's interesting to see it from Korchnoi's point of view.
Now, what point of the match was this played?
This was game 17.
So at this point, had the controversy regarding Dr. Zhukar and the Ananda Marga started to rear its ugly head?
Oh, it had been raging for some time.
Can you
Not
tell the audience?
not the Ananda Marga, the Dr. Zhukar bit.
Let's hear something about Zhukar, because not everybody knows, especially the younger generation, about this curious character.
There were 3 phases of extraterrestrial activity in the match. The first one was the Great Yogurt Gambit, which I've mentioned before, where Karpov got a yogurt and we complained and said that the yogurt could be a coded message depending whether it was violet, blue. So the yogurt had to be delivered at a certain time with a pre-specified colour. The next one was the
Soviets.
Yes, that's right. The second one was the Dr. Zhukar episode where Korchnoi identified this man Zhukar as a parapsychologist who was beaming harmful rays at him.
From the audience.
And that culminated with game 17, at which point Karpov was 3 games up. So he'd won game 8, and he won games 13 and 14, and then he won game 17. So he'd won 4 of the 6 games he needed to win the championship, and the only game Korchnoi had won was the G3 game we've just seen. And after this game, Korchnoi went to Baguio City for a rest, not Baguio, Manila for a rest, and I was left in charge in Baguio, and I negotiated the decommissioning of Dr. Zhukar and got him shifted to the back rows. So peace broke out, the match resumed. Korchnoi was a long way down, but at least peace had been restored.
I presume
And
the
then
Rays couldn't reach that far from the back row.
yeah,
The Rays sort of died in the front row of the
they
stall.
died. Yes, they dissipated. And then when Korchnoi came back, to my horror, we had the Ananda Marga saga, where these people who were convicted terrorists on bail for attempted murder suddenly volunteered their services to levitate the victory. I couldn't believe it. Anyway,
I actually met an Ananda Marga when I was in Manila. He did seem a bit sort of grumpy and uptight, you know, for somebody who did loads of yoga. You normally expect them to be quite relaxed, but he kind of there was like this sense of, you know, anger about him, you know.
yeah.
But I don't know if you noticed with your Ananda Margas, but he seemed kind of angry.
They'd been convicted of stabbing an Indian diplomat. It wasn't exactly the act of a committed pacifist.
No.
Anyway, shall we look at the game?
Yeah, let's look at the game.
No, but
Right.
Korchnoi not actually believed in these guys were doing him.
So we
doing,
have
good favour, didn't he?
an English opening move order, and now D4 rather than E4, which was played in some games in the 74 match.
It was also played in the one of the games in this match. I think game 20. Was it game 27? Korchnoi was white in the odd games. Game 27, or maybe, no, 27. I think Korchnoi played 4 there and Karpov played C5.
Right.
And lost.
Right. So playing 1C4 was a way of trying to worry Karpov that he was going to play 3-4 and try and sidestep the Nimzo.
Yeah.
I think
now this is a move designed by Yasha Murray, who was one of Korchnoi's seconds.
Yeah.
And of course, you know, Black doesn't need to go into it. He could have played D5 instead of C5, or he could have played the, instead of castling, played the bishop takes C3 check line. But Karpov seemed quite happy with this, although we felt the white was better. And Karpov always went for the sort of B5 gambit, which he'd played before.
Right.
And I think he played it again now, didn't he? Played B5.
I think in your book it was a long time ago that I last looked at it. I was trying to find it before the show. You recommended H6 in this position, just taking the H.
Book here.
Oh, yeah, that book.
Yes,
Is
that
H6 the recommended move?
Yeah, the point being that if white plays E4, you can take on D5.
Yeah,
when you take back with the C pawn, I think you can play knight takes E4 then.
Ah, right.
Quite a clever idea, H6. I think that was Yasha Murray's idea.
Right. So this is a gambit, very unfamiliar for Karpov, who, tended not to enter into chaotic positions.
Yes.
And he has I think there's certain players you wouldn't particularly want to play this against if you were white.
Yeah.
I honestly can't see this type of game being taken place in a modern World Championship match with computer preparation. You'd have to be insane, wouldn't you, to go for this?
Probably it.
You might do it if you're the underdog and sort of gamble that your engine has worked better than your opponent's.
No, it just strikes me that chess was kind of more interesting than in a World Championship scenario than it is today.
The whole yogurt things and everything, and the parapsychologists and so forth and so on. I mean that certainly hasn't happened in the last few matches.
No, the most exciting thing I think that happened in relatively modern history was the stopping of the match in 1985.
But even that's a long time ago.
That was fun, but again, even that was a long time ago.
Frankly, the matches today are a little bit bland.
Yeah. See, Black's not really getting much for his pawn here.
Yeah.
We were going to have quite high hopes of Korchnoi winning this game. at this point.
But he started to drift into time trouble. When I played him at your Staunton Memorial in the post-mortem, which actually took place in the playing hall, much to the arbiter's annoyance, then he he kept saying nothing to calculate in certain positions, and I think his time trouble probably stemmed from over calculating and calculating when it probably wasn't appropriate. So he might have eventually taught himself not to do this.
Now the funny thing about this position is, I mean, White's clearly better now in my opinion, and one of the problems that Black's got is this knight on A5, which is quite a long way away from the scene of action, and yet it was the knights that caused Korchnoi's destruction in the game. That Korchnoi managed to let these knights into the game when he shouldn't have done. I mean, Black should never win this position. It's ridiculous.
Yeah. So King.
And White's got a huge initiative, and he's a pawn up. Is he a pawn? He's not quite a pawn up, but he's going to be a pawn up.
Yeah, he's.
There's wonderful position for White. You should never lose this at all.
Yeah, Rook B5. Because without this game, then he might well have been ahead going into the final game.
Yeah, I mean, look at this. White's just kicking around the board.
Yeah, so knight takes A3, you play Rook D1 check and win. Do you win the Rook that way? Oh, knight takes A3, knight takes E5. Takes, and now Rook E7 check. So this is okay. So he's now got a large flotilla of pawns, and he should just take H7, like obviously there, and not drive the king to a better position.
Yeah,
but I imagine he was already like desperately short of time.
Oh yes, he had virtually no time left at all, and playing Rook D7 check, of course, helps Black.
Yeah,
but I mean now,
the finish is tragic.
If he's desperately short of time, he could have played Rook takes E4 check there, and Rook takes H7. He'll never lose.
Yeah.
No, impossible to lose.
And knight CD2.
Yeah.
Rook A3, Rook C6. And he defends against Rook C1 with Rook A1 with like seconds left on the clock. And White should play G3. And now there's this cute, well, not so cute if you're a second, finish with knight F3 check. And if King H1, there's knight F2 mate, or if you take the knight, there's Rook G6 check, King H1, knight F2 mate.
Yeah, tragic.
And that is the end of that.
Yeah.
And, so that was 5-1.
4-1.
4-1.
Can you just excuse me for a second? I'll be,
sure.
I'll be back. I have to go and do so. I'll be straight back.
Yeah, okay. So we've got, I mean, the matches at that time were, the first to 6 wins. Was it first to 6 wins in a 32 game limit?
Was there a limit? What happens after game 32? The guy who hedges wins.
I think that might have been it. But this was a Fisher scoring system, wasn't it? This was the Bobby Fischer in 1975. He tried to negotiate like for the first to 10 wins or something. Which would have gone on for a year probably. Maybe not with Fisher playing.
I don't think it would have gone that long.
Yeah, and then there were negotiations about how they should stage matches in future.
This was a different animal in those days.
Yeah, the idea of having not a set limit of games, like 24 games, but the first to so many wins. Now, And now it's a set number of games, 16 games, and then they go into rapid and blitz playoffs, which is, is going to discourage any kind of risk taking, I think. Because you're almost from the start, you're thinking, well, can I get to +1 or will it be equal? And then we've got the rapid play and the blitz.
I mean, you can see why Carlson's getting a bit frustrated with the World Championship cycle. He doesn't want to go on with it because
Oh God, yeah.
The amount of preparation needed for even 16 games,
Well,
would be.
I do get it.
The Pomniachi, what sort of backup did he have for the last match?
Well, he had his own private supercomputer.
Well, so what can you say about that?
Yeah. I think to be honest, that maybe I don't know if you would agree with this, Ray, but the World Championship, I'm not sure it's a necessary competition anymore, and that we all very well know who the top player is, and because there's live ratings. When you're so far ahead of the rest of the field, it's like clear who the number one is. Rather than have these squiggly little 16-game matches, then why not just have ratings and a world number one? So
I think there's a certain romance in having a world championship match, but of course, if the players draw their games, the romance gets somewhat deadened.
Yeah.
And also, if one of the players is so clearly superior to the other one, the romance gets somewhat deadened. I agree that
Well, to finish a match, World Championship match with quick play is crazy, isn't it? I mean, it really is ridiculous.
I think that in the past there were giant figures who were sort of humongous personalities, and I just don't get the impression that the modern players are sort of huge personalities.
Well, they probably have to study computer lines all the time, so they don't get out much.
Yes, they don't get out much. I think it would be a shame to lose the World Championship, but I know what you mean.
Yeah. Now, we actually discussed the variation in the final game, or the position in the final game, during a tournament in Portugal in 1986.
Was I there?
You were there, yeah.
85.
85. Yeah, and you were playing the E takes F6 Caro-Kann, and I think you suffered the indignity of drawing with some Portuguese orange growers or something, and that was your last event.
Portuguese what? Sorry?
Orange growers.
Oh, yeah. I was finding it very. In my last three tournaments, I played in Malta, Chicago, and Portugal in 1985, and I only lost one game over the three tournaments. I won the tournament in Malta. Well, it wasn't a particularly strong tournament, but anyway, I still won it. I didn't do very well in Chicago, and I just drew too many games in Portugal.
Yeah.
And it was about the time when I was appointed chess correspondent for the Times, and I just thought, bugger this. I'm not enjoying it anymore. I'm drawing with people that normally I could beat in my sleep. Flogging my guts out. I may as well just focus on writing, organising championship matches and tournaments, and trying to get chess on television, all of which I managed to do.
Yeah, but you showed some interest in my game. I beat Rivas with this particular position. In fact, we may have got there by the same move order. And I used a different plan to the one that that Korchnoi used. I went for a queenside expansion with A6 and B5.
Well, you didn't play C5.
Sorry?
You played C5.
Yeah, I played C5. D5.
There's nothing wrong with C5. It's a perfectly good move. It's what Korchnoi did afterwards that was catastrophic.
Didn't he play Bishop G4 in an earlier game?
Yes.
I mean, what was wrong with that?
Nothing at all.
And yet,
there's actually nothing wrong with C5 either. It's the follow-up that's crazy.
I think Murray Chapler mentioned suggesting some pawn sacrifice to Korchnoi, and that he was over visiting your camp and had a few ideas on the Piets.
Yeah, I don't remember what his idea was.
Yeah, it was with Bishop G4 and Knight C6.
Yeah. So what did Black play now? Knight A6.
Well, Knight A6, Bishop F4, Knight C7.
Yeah,
We're coming to the critical moment, aren't we? This move.
No, this is all wrong. The idea of putting the bishop on B7 is, in my opinion, entirely bonkers.
So what's the story behind that move? Why the choice of this move then?
Well, Michael Steen suggested it, and everybody else in the camp, which included Oscar Pano, Yasha Muro, and myself, said this is wrong because you're putting the bishop on the square, which is facing a granite wall of white pawns, and you just don't want to be doing that. Now, maybe it's playable, but I doubt it, and it certainly makes life difficult for Black. I mean, there are many other things you can do in this position apart from B6 and Bishop B7. I mean, it's the classic wrong position to have your bishop on. I mean, even Bishop G4 is probably better than that in this position, or just Rook B8 and A6 and then try and play B5. And I've played this sort of position many times.
Isn't it prophylaxis against E5 though? Putting the bishop on B7.
Yeah, but it's so passive.
Yeah.
Well, it's passive, yeah, certainly.
It's
dreadfully passive.
If we go back to this position, then Leonid Stein, he played Bishop G4 in order to just exchange the knight off and then exert prophylaxis against E4, E5, and and then you take.
I think wasn't Stein white against Bielek in this position.
Well, he was, but Bielek didn't play it right.
No.
Bielek made some mistake, but this line has more recently become quite fashionable from Black's perspective. They think it may be the best to play Bishop G4.
Yeah.
I personally have some doubts about the whole thing, having played it quite a bit. Nowadays, I quite like a bit more space.
Is the idea to go E6 or something like that? Is that the idea?
Yeah, just to go E6.
Stein took on E6 against Bielek, I think. He played knight C or something like that.
Yeah, but I think Bielek had misplaced his knight as well or something. Okay. Well,
okay, knight A6. So let's set the scene here. It's five games all in the match.
Yep.
Korchnoi has just won a string of games, and so Karpov would be unsettled at this point. So was the game plan just to go in and go all out for victory with black pieces?
More or less, yes.
I mean, it looks like that from this choice of opening.
Which probably wasn't the right idea at all. And I said I wouldn't have recommended. I wouldn't really have recommended playing C5 because White's position is a bit too easy to play after that. And I certainly didn't want him to play B6. I was horrified by B6, as was Yasha Murray.
I mean, the big danger to Black here is that White is going to play E5 at the right moment and smash him up. So everything Black does is going to be geared towards stopping or meeting that move. So this move is not nice, according to you.
I don't like it at all.
That's Steen's move, is it?
Yeah. Well, the whole idea of B6 and Bishop B7 was Steen's idea.
Yeah.
There was actually a game played by Tal against somebody in 1964, I think, where Black tried this and got completely done over. And I don't like this position for Black at all. I mean, White's overprotecting D5. The bishop on B7 is going nowhere. Black hasn't really got a chance in hell of playing A6 and B5.
I think I had a game against Nick Pert, something like this, and I think I actually went A6 in a position like this.
Yeah.
And he just killed some time here. He played a move like H3, and already Black's out of moves. It's not that easy to find moves.
No, it's not.
Because White's holding. If Black can't go B5, what can he do? And of course,
I've played it.
Go Queen D7, you run into this.
Queen D7 and Rook A D8, but you probably want to go Queen D7 before A6, because then you can at least meet E5 with Knight H5.
Yeah,
but I'm still deeply suspicious of the whole thing.
Well, I mean, after this, can't we just do this as well? You know.
Well, Rook A D8 probably.
Well, then I'm going E5. Can I do that? Is E5 a move?
Yeah, Knight takes Queen C8.
Yeah.
The Queen is on its merry way to A8. Well, now I've got pressure against your D5 pawn.
Well, that's.
I think E5 is a bit premature. White can play Queen D3 and Rook A D1 before doing all this stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's true.
I mean, Black's not going anywhere.
Well, he's going to go A6 and B5.
White can do what he likes.
Well, is that true?
Well, or maybe Queen C8 there, Andrew. Or are you going to go A5?
I don't need to play that, do I?
Rook A D1, Queen C8, Rook F E8.
I think we can all agree it's not a barrel of laughs for Black, is it?
No, it's not at all. And what Victor played was, I think, almost the worst thing you could have done. Wasn't even something like Knight H5, wasn't it?
Yeah.
He was probably starting to. This is the move of somebody who realises his position is a bit ropey, and that's kind of surprising when you're just like 2 moves into your preparation.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it's not like Karpov's Bishop C4 and Bishop F4. There's nothing surprising about White's play here.
Nothing at all. No.
What was
it's too easy.
What was Korchnoi's mental state like during this match? Because he seemed very unsettled.
Well, he was certainly in a good mental state before this game, but he just won 3 games in a row. You know, he was very, very positive. I actually thought that he had a good chance of finishing off the match with this game, actually, because Karpov was looking absolutely dreadful.
Yeah, giving White a move, a free move, or even 2 free moves.
Yeah, it was ridiculous.
It doesn't look. Here we go. Well, yeah, but this H3 move
now,
again.
What's Rook B8 doing in that position? It looks. I mean, it looks
the vague hope of getting B5 in.
It just, you know, it's not part of the Bishop B7 concept, but then neither is Knight H5 to F6.
No. So what did Korchnoi do now? I've completely forgotten. I've erased this game.
Knight D7.
Knight D7.
Yeah.
It's the last position you want to have against Karpov, I would say. Well, he went Queen E3.
Queen E3.
And Black's king side's looking quite bare. So exchanging off the fianchetto bishops.
I saw something remarkable before you play Black's move. After White plays Bishop H6, I saw it while I was writing Yuri Averbach's obituary for my weekly column in the article. I saw a game where Averbach played Bishop H6 against Petrosyan in a not identical by any means, but mildly similar position. And you know what Petrosyan played in this similar situation? I'll have a guess.
Bishop takes bishop at F6.
What?
Well,
it's just horrendous, isn't it? If you've got to do that.
But Petrosyan came with this amazing idea, and what do you think it was? Only structurally similar. I mean, the position was actually a different opening. Structurally similar, and Petrosyan came up with an amazing
Knight E5 with the idea of taking him out with a pawn on E5.
No.
F6.
No. I'll tell you, he played Bishop H8.
Right.
He just gave up the rook on F8, and you know what? Averbach didn't take it because the idea is that after Bishop takes F8, you know, Queen takes F8. You've suddenly got marvellous dark square counterplay.
Okay, it's quite hard to
Well,
judge.
it would probably have been a better try than the game.
Oh, I agree, but most people wouldn't have thought of that. By the way, Petrosyan lost anyway. He got completely crushed in 28 moves. But I mean, I would never have thought of that idea. It's a tribute to Petrosyan's amazing strategic insight that he even thought of it.
Well, they do something like that in the Dragon, don't they? Sometimes.
Maybe, I don't know.
They usually have a pawn for it because whites sacrificed a pawn.
Yes. I once played a dragon against Sweating, and I did something like that, but I think I had a bit more compensation. Yeah. And also, White's king was on the queen side, so that also. And if White's king was on B1, I would have said that would be an absolutely wonderful idea.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So he went B5.
Yeah. Took on G7. Yeah.
White denuded the king's side. And now the problem is Black's left without a plan as White methodically manoeuvres his pieces over to the king's side.
Yeah.
There's potentially a plan of B4 for White as well. You know,
all these demonstrations on the queen's side coming to nothing because there's no target.
Yeah.
And now there we are. This is the killer moment, isn't it?
Oh, yes. But there are all sorts of sacrifices around Black. If the knight moves away from F6.
Well, the nice point is that if he plays knight here,
yeah,
we have this move.
Yeah, exactly.
In comes the queen, and now that's a crusher.
Certainly is.
Nice little variation. Yeah, this is a position to avoid. God help you if it's a deciding game in a World Championship match.
Yeah.
So, I mean, Korchnoi's personality, did he go up and down like a yo-yo, or was he wasn't even-tempered, was he?
No, he was very volatile. But I mean, before this game, though, he was quite buoyant. I think if he hadn't played this opening, he would probably have won the match. If he played something very solid like the Kara Khan or something, I think he would have won.
Well, or even Bishop G4, move 6.
Or even Bishop G4. I mean, Karpov looked as if he was dead. He actually looked as if he was dead. I mean, I never got to see him close up until the closing ceremony a few days later. And he really looked dead. I mean, he was like a skeleton. You know, and the same thing happened to him in 1985. That he hadn't got the stamina for one of these long matches. And Korchnoi, waltzed off to Buenos Aires and won the ball prize on top ball for Switzerland in the Chess Olympics after this game.
Yes, well, wasn't there a problem in the sense that the match was being thought to go on too long, and it was getting closer and closer to the Olympiad date that same year. Didn't you go and play for England in the Olympiad straight afterwards? Is that right?
Yeah, well, I couldn't play it. I couldn't rub 2 pawns together. I was completely wiped out. Couldn't stay awake. But Korchnoi went off and destroyed everybody in sight. Made an amazing score. The guy was incredible at his best.
Well, so on with the show. I think you've got your hand over the lens. We can see your thumb very well.
We've only seen your finger for the last 10 minutes or so.
Oh dear, sorry.
Never mind.
Is that better?
That's much better. So knight h4. Doesn't take much imagination to see what's coming here. What can you do about it? And now pawn goes down.
No, that's hopeless.
Yeah.
What happened after this game? Korchnoi came back to the camp. What happened? What was he like?
Well, he was very angry, and he refused to go to the closing ceremony. And I don't even think he actually resigned the adjourned position. I think he just didn't turn up for it. And he didn't go to the closing ceremony, and I had to represent him at the closing ceremony. I thought it was very undignified if nobody was there from our group. Uh, well, I think it was a huge waste. Yes. I hate to look at this. I really don't like it.
Yeah.
I mean, this is tragic.
I mean, when you've invested so much time in this, the Korchnoi campaign to become world champion, for it to be sort of frittered away with this mangy B6 Bishop B7 plan and
Yeah.
not H5 to F6, then I can see it would be a bit dispiriting.
Yes.
And that was it.
But I mean, it's it's an amazing piece of chess history, and when people were trying to tell me how interesting the recent Carlsen matches were, I just reminded them, of Baguio City 1978, and the second Kasparov Karpov match, which Kasparov won brilliantly.
Yes.
Fischer Spassky, of course, and almost every other match in chess history was more interesting.
Yes.
Nobody realises it, So I think it's quite interesting to delve back a little bit.
Yeah, I think you have to go back to the matches between Lasker and Janowski and Lasker Marshall before you find things that were as uninteresting as the recent World Championship matches, and that was because Lasker just won all the games. There was no opposition to him. But I agree, the recent World Championship matches have been very disappointing. I mean, I thought the Caruana match was absolutely dreadful. I mean, they were playing good chess, but it was obvious what was happening. That Carlsen just ruthlessly was playing for the playoff when he knew he beat Caruana in the quick play.
Yeah,
which he did easily, 3-0.
Yeah, I mean, I think it maybe it'd be slightly more interesting if some really good blitz player qualifies, Nakamura or Maxime Vachier-Lagrave. But I do think that you need somebody like that to worry Carlsen about the playoffs.
Yes.
Otherwise, he's just going to coast through. 50% is okay. I'll win the Rapids.
Yeah. Yes.
So okay.
That was that.
That was that. I mean, do you have anything to add, Ray, on this?
I might add that Korchnoi qualified again in 1981 and played Karpov in Murano, and he sacked me, of course, and blamed me for his loss in this match, even though I'd had nothing to do with this nonsense in the last game. And
didn't he accuse you of writing a book during the match?
He accused me of all sorts of things,
and signing a contract to the effect that you wouldn't do that, and yet you did it. I don't know. Was there anything in that?
The contract that he made me sign was meaningless. It was actually a meaningless piece of paper. If we'd had a contract, he could have enforced it, but there was nothing that made any sense at all. And
I mean, I've got this book here. It's really entertaining. It's one of my favourite World Championship match books, but it did come out 3 days after the match finished, didn't it? I don't know.
If you look at the contract we wrote, it didn't prohibit me from doing it at all. I think he thought it might have done, but it didn't. Otherwise, I wouldn't have done it. And I wrote a book about the subsequent match, the one in Murano, and I explained all. I don't know if you've seen that one. But it explains what happened in great detail with chapter and verse. And in that match, he started off with 3 straight losses, and didn't come anywhere close to the success he achieved in Baguio. And I won't blow my own trumpet to the extent of saying that if he carried on working together, it would have been any better. But I don't think it could have been much worse.
Yeah.
I think he even hired the Ananda Marga again for the second match, and had to throw them out after 3 games because he lost I think he drew one game out of the first four and lost the other three. It was a disaster. But if you want to talk about the Morano match, I'm very happy to do that in another session. Because I was there, I just wasn't helping Korchnoi.
Right.
I also wasn't helping Karpov. I was just there as a journalist. But
were you kept out of the the parties and whatever, or did you get to go into those?
I didn't go to any parties in 1981. I was just purely there reporting on it.
I did read for the Baguio match, Karpov. Campomanes was regarded as a pro Karpov supporter. Would you say that was true or not?
I think that was definitely true. But I did
to
my
the
best
extent that he was intercepting communications between the Korchnoi group and other people during the match and relaying it to Karpov. Is there any truth in that, or is that just nonsense?
I don't think anything that he could have relayed would have helped him in the slightest.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think it would have helped him. I think he wanted Karpov to win, definitely. But I did my best when Korchnoi left Baguio for Manila after Game 17, which we've just looked at, to completely win him back to our side. I was very nice to Campomanes, and I even gave a speech in his honour at the Rotary Club in Baguio, and he burst into tears. He was so overwhelmed with what I said about him. So, I realised the importance of having the match organisation on our side.
Yeah.
And I thought Campomanes did a good job afterwards, in general, until he stopped the match in 1985. And then I think he really was on Karpov's side. He was trying to help Karpov against Kasparov, which was pointless, really. I don't think Kasparov had anything against him until he stopped the match. But if you want to look at the Morano match, I'm very happy to do it in some later stage. But have you got my book on the Morano match?
I certainly have it. I've got loads of your match books, but I think they're buried behind other books on the shelves somewhere. Right. So
well, if you want to send in the ferrets and dig them out, because if you want to talk about contracts and books and my relation with Korchnoi, I have a whole section on that in the Morano book,
right,
with chapter and verse. I quote all the regulations, all the contractual agreements, what I did and why I did it, what Korchnoi did and why he did it. I mean, there's an entire chapter on it in there, and I'm very happy to talk about it if you want to.
That does sound interesting.
Yeah, it helps to have read the book or reread the book, because this was over 40 years ago, and I don't remember it all absolutely. I remember some of it, but not all of it.
Well, we have to have a show on the termination match, Karpov versus Kasparov.
I'm very happy to do that.
That would be fantastic. Another fantastic show.
Yeah, I'm very happy to do that. Also on the one that I organised in London in 1986. So
and we were commentating on.
Yes. On the 86 one.
Yeah, we were there. We were constantly told not to make any jokes because the audience were laughing and disturbing the players.
Yeah.
Here comes Lothar.
Yeah,
very funny. Well, anyway, I hope that this particular broadcast matches the audience level for the previous one, because that was quite good, wasn't it?
Yeah. But I mean, well, the big thing, Danny Gormally has jumped to the forefront with the ratings. He's
has he?
Unbelievably popular. Yeah, he's just outstripped everybody. But yeah, but thanks very much indeed again for coming on our show, and we're looking forward to some more on these World Championship matches.
So what do I have to do to exceed Danny Gormally? How much the hell?
Well, it's just unbelievable. We were astonished by.
Get your granny to log in 400 times a day, then you'll be fine.
I think you've got to urge people to watch the YouTube channel in your article column. That might do it.
No, I'll do that. That's no problem at all. All right. Okay. Well, let me know when you want to do another one, and I'll be happy to oblige.
Brilliant. Thanks
Thank you
very
much for coming on, Ray.
Right.
Okay.
All the best.
Bye.
Bye.